Okay, we've got some questions that have come in. Questions at FRC. You can send those in, or you can tweet them in at FRCDC. Okay, Gina, I'm going to give you this question. This comes from Jim. In leading a culture impact team, how do you keep it nonpartisan in a diverse congregation? The reason I want to ask you is because I've preached at your church. Jack Hibbs, pastor there, I've preached there many times, a very diverse congregation. How do you keep it nonpartisan?
You have to work at it. Because, you know, our society is so partisan nowadays, but you have to just make sure that the material that you're handing out is nonpartisan. And we're speaking about moral issues. We're not trying to say this party does this and this party does that. We are talking about life, marriage, you name it. But the church has the right and the responsibility to speak into the culture about that.
Yeah, and, you know, I'll just have to say, you can't be timid. There are going to be some who are going to complain about the questions. I mean, Hank, you see that? In fact, some who complain the loudest are the candidates. They don't like to be asked the questions. And of course, they have, some of them may have supporters in your church. So look, if you're making a difference, you're going to make waves, right? Just get used to that. But we have guidelines that will help you go through this where you are completely covered legally. We don't advocate that you breach the law. There is plenty, and let me emphasize, plenty that we can do within the confines of the law. The fact of the matter is we're not even doing that. So we've got those guidelines, cultureimpact.org. All right, let me ask you, this comes from Joe in Maryland via email, and I throw this up for both of you. What are some good questions and or statements to pose to lethargic believers that might assist in provoking them to engagement? Suggestions?
I'm always thinking about the next generation. I'm thinking about, seriously, what are we leaving our children? And when I think about what our nation's going to look like another 5 years, another 10 years, another 20 years, it really does break my heart. And I know that it also grieves the Lord. So I think that as Christians, speaking into the legislature, the city council, we can make a difference. And we have seen that we have made a difference. So I want to encourage every church to do the same thing.
It is simple. If we don't like the way things are going, we have to change course. We have to engage. Simply sitting back, standing back is not going to do it. Mm-hmm. We've got to be bold.
Hank, let me ask you this one. This comes from Tony in Bighorn Canyon Community Church in Rapid City, South Dakota. At a local level, and I ask you this because I know you've broken this down within the Culture Impact team there in our church. At the local, how does a CIT become aware of new rules, legislative actions, and such as they're being considered? So, how do you keep up with what's happening at the city council? How do you keep up with what's happening in the legislature?
Well, that's a fundamental challenge. And Tony, I'd like to recommend that you touch bases with your state family policy group and stay in touch with them. Let them know what you're doing. They'll partner with you. Also with FRC Action. That's a valuable resource to help you to understand what's going on within your state, and also to network with other churches that are like-minded.
Right. Mm-hmm. And this is where you have you share the burden as you can bring more in. But the family policy councils, and we have those in about 41 states, and we partner with them in our culture impact teams. And if you're in a particular state and we're partnering with your family policy council, that information will be in the back of the Culture Impact Team manual. In fact, most of these are co-branded with our state policy councils. And they will keep you up to date on what's happening in the legislatures. Sometimes on the city council, and I know we've done this, Hank and Gina, I know you guys are very good at this as well, even when it comes to the local school board, is kind of breaking down the responsibility where you have a team that's tracking the school, a team that's tracking the local city council, and feeding that information back in.
And the result is we have people that come back and report to us things that are taking place. And when we found out that atheists, for instance, were suing our school district because they didn't want invocations, well, then that's the opportunity for the church to speak up and say, we have the right to have an invocation in our school board or our city council, and we get involved.
And sometimes it's coming alongside the school board officials who want to do the right thing but aren't quite sure what to do. And through the church, you can also let them know that there are legal resources available to them. As we've heard here today, they're not only here to represent the church, they'll represent school boards that are willing to stand up to defend religious freedom. But then the flip side of that, I know this is true in Chino Hills, where before your culture impact team actually helped change the makeup of the school board by replacing some members, you had the school out there actually promoting Islam. And that word got back to the church and engaged the culture impact team.
Well, the result of that was Pastor Jack put together a series of teachings about what Islam actually is, what they're doing in our school district, and the purpose was to educate the community, the parents, so that they're aware when their kids are coming home with material, curriculum that teaches something that is not healthy for our children. They were able to speak up and talk to the school board.
So now, instead of kids in the schools there in Chino Hills plotting out their pilgrimage to Mecca, they actually have an elective to study the Bible.
That's another result of the school being involved in monitoring
Amen.
the school district. Having one of the school board members that is from our CIT on the board, and he introduced curriculum for our high school seniors and juniors to actually get unit credit for studying the Bible as history.
As an elective. Are you getting the picture?
Right.
Culture impact teams can help the church transform the culture. Now, it's the gospel that transforms the hearts, but you can't stop with just changing people's hearts. We've got to show them how to change the culture and what's important in the values that we embrace. All right, I want to get to a few more of these questions. All right, how do we get American Christians to stand together at election time just like Houston pastors did in Houston?
I think that's always been one of the biggest challenges. We know that we don't have enough Christians going out to the voting ballot booth, and it's constant, it's on a regular basis, and not that Pastor Jack is talking politics every Sunday, but when the opportunity arises, he will address the issue from a biblical worldview with his Bible in his hand. And so the church, after all these years, has grown in their understanding of what a biblical worldview actually is. And so they take that with them into the ballot box.
And it just reminded me of something in the conversations I had with Pastor Hibbs after the June 26th decision by the Supreme Court. Because I know there's some pastors out there think, oh, if I do this, I'm going to have all these people in my church going to be upset, they're going to leave. I think it was 4 straight Sundays after that decision as Pastor Jack, in normal fashion, engaged the congregation with biblical truth on the issues. You were having to bring in chairs to accommodate the overflow of people who were wanting to know the truth.
Exactly right, and that happens on a regular basis whenever a major issue comes up. We have the media seeking out Pastor Jack to get his take on whatever the issue is. And the congregation, they know what Pastor Jack stands on, these biblical truths.
And as a result, you have people coming to the church. In fact, it's not people leave the church when you take a stand today. People are looking for a church that will take a stand, and they come in. In fact, I have a question that came in from Patrick. He says, I've had trouble getting plugged into a church, so I'm not a regular church goer, but I want to get involved in impacting the culture. What can individuals do to impact the culture? I'm going to take the first stab at this, and then I'll let you weigh in. I think first off, and this is kind of the heart of FRC, is you need to be in the local church. It is the church that has the keys of the kingdom. It is the church that has the ability to impact. And I understand the disappointment. I hear it all the time where we don't have churches that are challenging people. Find a church. If you need help, let us know. We'll connect you with one of the over 10,000 Watchman churches that we have in our network in every state in the nation. We'll connect you with one of those churches that is committed to impacting the culture. You can make a difference.
Yes, you can. I tell you what, it takes prayer. It takes seeking God. I visited a church for over 2 years before I knew that God wanted me there, and the purpose there, as far as I believe, the culture impact team there. So you have to seek Him. And if you don't feel a peace in the church, then, you know, that's between you and God, but there are churches for you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of it may be going along, 'cause I know you've got a pastor who is engaged. You've got a pastor who's engaged. You might not have a pastor who's engaged. Sit down and talk with them first. Share with them what you've heard here. Direct them to the resources available to them. Encourage them to come to our May Pastors Conference here in Washington, D.C., our Watchman Pastors Conference. Maybe they'll catch the vision. If not, then maybe you do need to pray about finding another church where you can be a part of impacting your culture. I mean, look, the hour is late. I don't think we have a whole lot of time, and we have to make every moment count. We've got to redeem the time, for the days are evil, and that means wherever we are, education, whether we're in entertainment, whether in the media, whether we're a plumber, doctor, truck driver, does not matter. But our faith must go before us, and we must impact the culture around us. Gina, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Great
Glad
work.
to be here. Thank
Hank,
you.
thank you for
brother.
your work.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much.